Yeah, let's talk today about your routine and what your routine means to you. And perhaps eventually we'll get to maybe how any sort of routine might have carried you through some dark times. You get up pretty early, right?
Yeah, I get up early, about 4:30. Only because my dad got up early too, and he used to tell me all the time that I like being up early because nobody's around to argue with you, and it's true. But the problem is that I also inherited my mother's ability to stay up late. Without a nap, it makes it hard to burn both ends of that candle. I get up early. I've been in the markets as long as you've been in the markets. So I have okay. There's something I'm very particular about, and people get irritated with me sometimes. But I absolutely have a schedule. I absolutely know where I am every point in the day, at what time I should be doing it to the minute. And whether it's driving into work in Nashville, our studios are on Music Row. I knew at every stoplight what time it should be to make sure that I'm on schedule. I'm that mechanized. And I think that I've read books about it before, but and it's I'm not going to try to flatter anybody, but when you have all that stuff taken care of, it gives you time to think about other stuff, right? When your desk is neat and everything's in its place and you don't have to worry about whatever everything is, it gives you time to think about other stuff. If you know exactly where you're going and what time you should be at each late light, when you should be entering the expressway, when you should be exiting the express, or what time you're actually doing that. I get to a red light down on DeMondrian Street in Nashville, and I knew that I had to be there every day, 4:56 or whatever. It gives you time to think about it. It takes all that stuff away. You just know you're on schedule and you're taking care of business. And I think being regimented like that, my dad and I talked about it a lot before he died, that we both would have been good at maybe being in the military because we both enjoy structure. And there's been books written about how that structure allows you to actually think about other things when you know you've got everything else taken care of. Another thing I do a lot is I plan ahead all the time. So I'm never surprised. We used to do it as brokers. You try to plan ahead all the time so you wouldn't be surprised about a market movement, an adverse market reaction. But I try to make sure that I have everything planned out at least a couple of weeks ahead of my head. I don't always share them with my wife, which just gets to be a little bit of a problem, but about what I'm supposed to be doing, where I'm supposed to be. I'm starting to get very busy now. Thursday morning, I'm going to drive an hour north to speak at a conference for a bunch of farmers in Kentucky. And then at the end of next week, I'll be at Purdue doing the same thing, next Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday the following. I mean, I have got now in my mind, I don't have it in my iPad or I don't have it on my phone per se. I do have them backed up on my phone, but I have a very good visual about what I'm going to be doing. And that also gives me time. It takes all of the vagueness away from everything, and it gives me a chance to actually think. And that's the one thing I'm always striving to do is have more time to think, because when I can think, I come up with really good ideas, and I like my mental process of what coming up with those good ideas, because sometimes it gives you unique market insight. Sometimes it gives me great things to talk about on television. When I start to look, and that I chalked it up a couple of things. Number one, I am very regimented. I've got everything, structurally in its place, which almost sounds OCDC, but it's not. I don't get, out of whack if something doesn't line up. But at the same time, having been an art major at University of Colorado, we went through that about my father really being disappointed about it, but still enjoying that part of my brain. When I can think and tap into that, I really, really come up with some really good market insights that nobody else does. That's gotten me, Stuart Varney on Fox has had a show for 16 years. I've probably been on it since almost the beginning. I'm probably one of the longest guests he's got on that show, even to this day. And it's because of when I have the chance, I used to say it all the time to my wife and my ex-wife, I just need some time to think. And they would say, what do you mean? I go, I don't have something guaranteed to think about. I'll just go through some ideas and I'll try to come up with something that's interesting. And I did it a lot over the pandemic. I was coming up with some great content because I did have a lot of time to think. There wasn't a lot of other things to do. And then that helps that translates into revenue, because then I'll write a column for the Northwest Indiana Times or something and get paid for it. I love planning ahead. I like things to be mechanized, and I like things to be, regimented, but that also allows me the chance to be free thinking and none of those things, right? Allows me to be off thinking bigger and in the wind. So it's really, I get anchored by that stuff that happens every day at the right time, and I'm planning and I'm looking around the corner. I'm anchored by that every day, but at the same time, I have to be like that, the artist in me, and think about what's going on. What's going on with Trump and Greenland? What's going on with Minneapolis and our ICE agents? What's going on with a lot of the things that are affecting everybody and how they live? And then that way, that gives me some unique insights, and I can put some stuff together where, I came up with something the other day that, we've got a bunch of people, you love ICE or hate ICE. It's not an indictment on ICE. I'm just trying to tell you what I think that is happening in this world when we've got a bunch of people that are sticking up for or trying to stick up for um, illegal immigrants, and I understand how that tugs at their hearts. I'm not a jerk. I understand that. And then at the same time, we had some people in Congress, we had doctors in Congress, and we were at the Supreme Court arguing about having whether it was right to have men and women's sports. And I had an aha moment. Those things are all linked because they're trying to delineate. They're trying to take away the difference between citizen and non-citizen. They want everybody to be equal. And they're trying to take away the difference between men and women because they want everybody to be equal. It's this homogenization of our society that they're trying to do by taking away the lines that define us. And I don't subscribe to that, but it came to me when I had time to think about it. Why is this bothering me? Well, men and women aren't the same. Citizens and non-citizens aren't the same, but there is a big push for them to be the same. Men and women's sports, we've all heard about that. And we've got people that are banging the drum to make sure that non-citizens have a right to vote because they don't think it's fair that citizens have more rights than non-citizens. That's the world we live in. And I don't mean to get political here, but I'll tell you, that is 100% trying to homogenize society, make it all equal. And what is equal society? It's Marxism, it's communism. It's, everybody's equal. We don't want anybody to succeed any more than the other guy. It's almost like being in a union. Don't work too hard. You don't stick out and work too hard, right? And so I come and then I can build a show around that, and it's much more interesting rather than just being, So that's what happens when I get the chance to think. So I'm grounded by mechanization, regimented stuff, everything in its place, and so that allows me to take some time and know that everything's taken care of, and I can now just think. And it does consume you. I do sometimes have to turn off. I'll have to go watch, 2.5 Men or something really, really stupid, so that I don't think about it anymore because it can get on you, and it can be very, very heavy. So I get up early so I can think. I make sure my day is ready ahead of me. And then I have a radio show at 7:30 in the morning. It's pretty hard to just hop on and do a radio show. So I have to prepare for that a little bit. Then after the radio show's done at 8:00, I have to prepare for my show. But hopefully my show is a reflection of all the chances I've had to think about things. And the chances I have to think about things, generally speaking, happen in the afternoon, early evening. Because I am so busy writing the show, getting it ready, so that by about 11 o'clock in the morning, I'm ready to go. I write monologues for every part of my show. I mean, it takes a lot to write an hour show. I know people don't understand that, but it's not easy to put that together. It really isn't, especially when it's live, coast to coast, across the country.
I mean, obviously, you're making a lot of appearances on podcasts. You're writing things. You're going on Fox. You're appearing on TV, radio, business. You're also doing your own shows. So you do have to come up with new material basically all the time. Do you think you would be able to, would you be able to get to that without the regimentation?
No, I don't. I do not, because I would be too worried about what's happening tomorrow, or appointments, or you have to live a life, right? You have to have your life. So I keep a day timer like everybody else does in their phone, but I just have to know that that's all taken care of behind the scenes, or you can't relax and you can't think and let your mind go and really decide what's important. And, I said it to you before, and I still say it again, like, Jim Valvano, when he said, he's an Italian guy, you have to laugh real hard every day. You have to cry real hard every day, and you have to spend some time in thought. Fully support that and sign up to it, because he's absolutely true. And, there was I don't know what it was. I needed some extra. I needed to have, it's so corny, but I was getting tired last week, and I needed to have some more motivation. And it was late at night before I went to bed, and I pulled up the, Australia Olympics 2000, Sydney Olympics 2000. And I said I wanted to rewatch Rulon Gardner's match against Alexei Karelin, the heavyweight champion, because I needed to have some, and I'm sure everybody knows what happened. Well, anyway, Rulon Gardner, kind of a dumpy American, very strong man, but he didn't look it, was going against a guy that had never lost ever in 18 years. Never lost. And nobody had scored a point on him in 10 years. And our guy won nothing. I mean, it's just a miracle. It's a bigger miracle than the miracle on ice in 1980. Anyway, I see stuff like that. I'm like, if he can do it, I can do it. And it gives me, so I give myself pep talks, but it's usually me pulling up something that really gets me going. I respond, and I like that I respond. And so I've got the grounding of the regiment. I've got the grounding of doing everything at the same time, the same way every day. But at the same time, that allows me to be a free thinker. And when I do need a little extra kick in the butt, I'll go motivate myself with looking at other people and how they motivated themselves. And I like it, and I do like it, and it works for me. It works for most people, and then all of a sudden something changed where it doesn't work for anybody under the age of 35 anymore. They don't respond to tough talk. You know what I mean? It's like there's a different type of person out there anymore that I don't understand. But I would have a very difficult time being a coach right now. For anybody under the age of 35, because they just don't respond like we used to. It doesn't mean it's worse. It just means it's different, and it's something that I'm not used to. But it's been great, and so that allows me. I love to think. I do it all the time. I mean, I'm absolutely doing it all the time. But it gets hard. After a while, it does get on.
We'll get to coaches. Obviously, we're very near the IU national championship, and we'll get to that in a second. But I want to come back to this, because one of the things we want to provide is like, all right, here's the cow guy, but what are some of the things we might be able to pull out of what he does and what's made him successful? The ability, it almost works against each other. You set up a routine and regimentation that actually allows you to be more artistic. We kind of laid that out. But you set up a regimentation and tragedy strikes, and you don't always feel like coming back to your routine. What can you say to people to get there?
I'll say this. If they have something really bad happen to them, I've said it before on this podcast, but for 60 days, I prayed to God every night that he would kill me in my sleep. I didn't want to get up. And then obviously he didn't, I guess I have more time here because he didn't grant me my wish. And so after that, obviously your regimentation is destroyed. You are just trying to survive. You're not eating. You want to make sure, I did a couple things I was very aware of, though. I made sure I wasn't drinking. I know quickly that can take control. So I really stayed away from the booze. I didn't want to do anything, that was addictive. But I will say this. People do ask me all the time. And the answer is I go to a place where I do a little research and find somebody else that has it worse than I do. And I don't know where I got this story. It was in People magazine. I don't know how I found it. But when I was feeling sorry for myself about my daughter dying and my dad dying and woe is me, there was a story about a guy in a small town on the East Coast in New England somewhere. And he was the president of the local bank. Kind of a small town, but like where you are, like not a big bank, but a local bank. And he had 3 daughters, and he was married to his wife, and everything was fine. The kids were all at home still, so nobody was in college. And some bad people from the local big city, I don't know if it was New York or not, but they knew that he was the president of the bank, drove a couple hours outside of the big city. And on his way to work on a Monday morning, they kidnapped him, brought him to the bank, gun to his head, open up all the safety deposit boxes. You know where that goes. So, they basically ransacked the bank. Well, then they drove him back to his house and tied him up and put him in the backyard and opened the windows to the house and made him listen while they raped his wife and all 3 of his daughters. And then, when that wasn't enough, they set the house on fire and made him listen to his family burning to death. He couldn't do anything about it. And the story was written so much so that it had passed. It was about 10 years later, and he had since remarried and had another child. And I said to myself at that point in time, if that guy can do it, I can do it. He had it way worse than me. And I go back to that story a lot. can't remember all the real details. I'm sure now people can Google, but I couldn't imagine anything more horrible than that. And he was still alive, walking around, making a life for himself. So I was like, if that guy can do it, I'm going to do it. Damn it! Stop feeling sorry for yourself. And it really shaped me up. It really did. And it got me back into my routine, got me back into my regimentation, got me back into doing the things I knew what I liked to do. And boy, it was that was a really big eye opener, and really made me. I mean, I don't want to. I didn't take any joy. I from his situation, but I just knew that. And then since then, every time I have a hard time, I go find somebody else that's got it worse than me, and then it makes me mad at myself for feeling bad about myself, and I have to shape up and go. You don't have it that bad. Nobody's going to hold a tag D for you. Get your shit together and get going. And that's how I got through it. Honestly, I had to read that story. I probably kept that magazine someplace, but I was in absolute awe at his intestinal fortitude that he could still have a life after that.
You
And
bring up the word,
I draw upon that.
You talk about youth, a number of times, how you're not understanding it. That seems to be kind of a generational thing, but I'm with you on that. And you just brought up the word intestinal fortitude. Do you think what you just said about establishing routine, about looking for others that might have it worse than you, do you think that would land on anyone under 35?
Maybe. I mean, I don't want to condemn a whole group of people, and I'm not condemning them. But there's something to be said for my grandfather going through the Depression, and then how affected my father when he was raised by my grandfather. And the same, my mother's dad went to war after. I mean, he wasn't home when she was born. His wife was pregnant when he left. I mean, we just took for granted the hardships back in the day, where now people think that that's just ridiculous. I don't deserve to have that problem. I mean, I deserve to have a better life. They're in Starbucks on their, $1,800, laptop, raging against the man eating a chicken salad sandwich. They have no idea where the chicken came from or where the salad came from. They're all angry and want to start, Armageddon and anarchy. I don't know. I mean, there's some great kids that are young. I mean, you've got one that works for you, Sam. He gets it, but I think it's got a lot to do with the cop that, dad that's a cop, and he comes from the salt of the earth people. But I don't think there is. I mean, intestinal fortitude's true. I don't think there's a lot of that left anymore. Number one. Number two, I don't think there's any accountability is now thinner than it's ever been. Nobody ever raises their hand and said, that was my fault, I screwed up. It's always somebody else's fault. It's not my fault. And I saw that a lot in Europe when I lived there for 16 years. You open up a store, you open up a shop. It's your dream to have this little storefront, and it folds in 6 months because you never were there on time. You were bad at customer service, and nobody likes the things that you were buying to sell. It was never their fault. It was always the government's fault because of taxes, or the government's fault because of my hours I couldn't keep, whatever. Nobody ever really says, maybe they never look into themselves, my knees are real bad from playing football at Colorado, and I was afforded the opportunity by RFTTV, the place I work for now, to work from home, and because they wanted me to be comfortable, and so they spent almost 6 figures on a studio in my house. They built one in my house, so I don't go anywhere for work anymore. I don't go to Nashville every day. I do every now and again, but not every day. But I did say to myself, well, this is a perfect opportunity to get your shit together. Go to the doctor, get whatever needs to be done to your knees, start getting on a training routine. Take this opportunity to make yourself better. Are you doing what needs to be done to get to where you go? Are you blaming it on anybody else? And you know what? I was angry that my knees hurt so bad. It was, this, that, the other. No. Are you doing as much as you possibly can to make yourself better? And if the answer is no, then shut up and do it. And so I've been working from home since September. Lost some weight. My knees are getting better. I'm going to the doctor. They're doing radiation. I've got some great things going on, but I decided to take this opportunity to make sure that I was doing 100% what I could. Was I giving it my all? And I don't think a lot of people look at themselves in the mirror and say, are you doing everything you can do? Or are you relying on other people to do it for you? I don't think people do that anymore. I don't think they're trying to do as they think they might be, but they're not, because they don't want to work, like this whole, AI is going to make it so we only have to have a 3-day week, right? You've heard that bullshit, right? Well, then that means productivity is not going to go up. You're just doing what you did in a week in 3 days, and you're not doing any extra work. If people talk about AI making productivity better, well, you have to work 5 days for that to happen. You can't just work the 3 and say, I'm done for the week because I did what I used to do in 5 days and 3 days. See you later. I mean, but that's crazy that that's the first thing that comes to people's minds about how much I can get out of doing something. It's that age old thing. If you spend as much time studying as you did about trying to cheat, you'd be much better off. And
We're
so,
coming. You
go ahead.
sound. You share your sentiments are shared with a lot of people. I have really young people working for me, and I'm integrating them on the air, and it's bumpy. There's literally no acceptance of them, and me, the only ones that hang are the ones that will work and run through a wall, or they're not going to make it, and they're going to do it at a really cheap price. So they do have intestinal fortitude, and they're under constant attack a lot of times on the air. I'm okay with that, because when they come work here and they go somewhere else, that they've already kind of gone through that. But one of the things that is, here we are in Indiana. My dad and I are Purdue guys, so we watched the game last night and we gave a nice golf clap, and then I went to bed and he rode 3 blocks home. All my brothers that went to IU, all my sisters, like 50 cousins, all just celebrated, and it was nuts. But really at the base of it is kind of like one guy with old school principles applying to a new world of NIL and technology and data. And somehow he's made it work way beyond anybody's expectation. When you look at that situation, what made it work?
He had expectations and chose kids that would be motivated by his expectations, because he's in a position where he gets to pick and choose, especially now with NIL. He gets to pay too. Okay. So he can find the people that he knows that will respond to his expectations, and they're old school. His old school I'm sitting here. I played at Colorado. I don't know. I was on the bench at Colorado, but I wish, why can't Colorado find Kurt Signetti? I mean, come on. I mean, the guy is fantastic because he sets an expectation and doesn't deviate from it. He reminds me a lot of my old coach who won the national championship in 1990, Bill McCartney, and he did Promise Keepers. There's just a way that you carry yourself and that expectation, and it's not a bunch of words. It's not a bunch of blather. And he finds kids that respond to that, I think. And I think that he also had a little bit more of a mature roster. I think that you'll find that it's pretty odd, but the average age was 24, which is really old. But on the flip side of that, I think that he only had about 8 4 or 5-star recruits, and an average team at that level in that position would have over 40. So he's doing something right when he's getting a hold of a kid's intestinal fortitude. What is the kid like as a character? I was 6 feet tall. I didn't have the height to play in the NFL, but I could hit you like a ton of bricks. And I used to really hate the Dallas Cowboys and Jerry Jones and Tom Landry, because they looked at everybody as a number. You had to be 6'4", you had to be this weight, you had to be this fast, and be this strong to be able to play for the Cowboys. You had to satisfy their computer requirements. And it used to anger me because I said that doesn't judge a man's heart. And I don't know if I said this story, but that's what I got judged on, and that's why people liked me, because if it was worth doing, it was worth doing right. No half-ass. And like my old coach he singled me out in front of practice one day. I think I told you this, but the backhanded compliment he gave me, and it's because I have a heart. I had a big heart, and they don't measure that anymore. I think Signetti, he does. And he finds kids that respond to his expectations because they have big hearts. And he said it a little bit yesterday in his press conference. I didn't watch the whole game because I got to get up early. But he did say that, a lot of people see the interviews with that Fernando Mendoza, and he comes across maybe as a little bit of a dorky kid, kind of a happy-go-lucky, but he said what kid went through, that took a lot of guts. He got bloodied. He got hit hard. He got hit hard after the whistle a couple times. He got hit in the head, and Signetti says there's something special about a kid that can handle that. And I think he chooses that. I really believe that. So Signetti's got success because he can pick who he thinks is going to, he's not always right, obviously, but he picks people that respond to, and I'll say it, Jim, a lot of the ways that people coach when you and I were growing up. If Bobby Knight could be alive today, he would probably be a success still, because he would be able to pick the kids he knows are going to be able to respond to the way he coaches. But Bobby Knight, that can't pick his team, isn't going to be successful, because people don't respond to that anymore. Generally speaking, there are a few, but it's Cignetti's successful that way because he can pick, and it's amazing. Probably one of the biggest sports stories of our generation. I don't know if there'll be another bigger one. That's an amazing. And I'm embarrassed to say that I didn't know the guy, but you look wherever he'd been earlier, he'd always won. And like he says, Google him. I mean, I love that guy. And I'll never forget when they hired him. I didn't know anything about his past. I didn't know anything about his record. I didn't know anything about his dad. I didn't know anything about anything. And they said Indiana hired a new football coach, and they had a clip of him being introduced at an Indiana Hoosiers basketball game. All he said was, my name's Curt Cignetti. I'm the new football coach. And I just have one thing to say. Michigan sucks. And everybody started going, they went crazy. And when it quieted down, he says, and Ohio State too. Now, I thought that was pretty unique. I thought it was ballsy. I thought, okay, here's an Indiana coach coming in. He's a big a big blustery guy. And he's going to get his ass kicked. But it was about 6 months later, and it was in the middle of the last season, not this season. And they asked him about that. And I heard his response. He says, I was sick and tired of talking. They had, I signed the contract. They had me shake everybody's hand in the entire school all day long. I'm on death's door. I just want to go to bed. So all I could think about was saying something that was going to be impactful and short. And he said, so I just thought I'd say Michigan and Ohio State suck. And that resonated with me. Like, I bet he was sick and tired of talking, sick and tired of glad handing and shaking hands. Anyway, so I think he's got, I'm sure his recipe for success is that he knows the type of kid he wants. And it doesn't have to be, that's where I was getting back to. It doesn't have to be a 4- and 5-star guy. He'll take a 1-star kid that's got that heart, because you can't coach heart. You can coach a guy to, hit the ball maybe better. You can coach a guy to throw the ball better. You can actually coach a guy to maybe run a little bit faster, but you can't coach a guy hard.
To leave it right there. He's the Cow Guy. Go anywhere you get your podcasts. What makes the Cow Guy cry? And thanks lots to Adriana Alvarez, as always, for editing this. And thanks to you, Scott, for doing this. We appreciate it.
No, Prima, it's a lot of fun. Thank you for letting me.
Until next time, see you later.